Craig, you mentioned Marco Rubio and how he's lying in his analysis of Mahmoud Khalil. Let's take a look, Brad, at this clip of Marco Rubio on Face the Nation from this weekend.
Can you substantiate any form of material support for terrorism, specifically to Hamas, from this Columbia student? Or was it simply that he was espousing a controversial political point of view?
Well, not just the student. We're going to do more. In fact, we every day now we're approving visa revocations. And if that visa led to a green card, the green card process as well. And here's why. It's very simple. When you apply to enter the United States and you get a visa, you are a guest. And you're coming as a student, you're coming as a tourist or what have you. And in it, you have to make certain assertions. And if you tell us when you apply for a visa, I'm coming to the U.S. to participate in pro-Hamas events, that runs counter to the foreign policy interest of the United States of America. It's that simple. So you lied. You came. If you had told us that you were going to do that, we never would have given you the visa. Now you're here. Now you do it. So you lied to us. You're out. It's that simple.
But
it's
is there any? But is there?
So, okay, no, he didn't lie. And no, it's not pro-Hamas. He's protesting against a genocide. And to be fair, how did he know about October 7th going to be happening, right?
Yeah, but they don't give, and when you apply for a visa, they don't ask you on the visa, when you apply for a student visa, what they're trying to establish is, are you coming here legitimately to study in a university? He said he was, he didn't lie. Secondly, so that's just nonsense, Secondly, he's no longer on a student visa. He's on a green card with all of the rights that go along with being a lawful permanent resident here. And thirdly, he did not participate in, quote, pro-Hamas demonstrations. So everything that comes out of Rubio's mouth in this interview is either a lie or a smear, which is also a lie, and it has no legal basis whatsoever. This is just raw exercise, the raw abuse of power.
If I may add, Margaret Brennan is someone who was with us in the briefing room for many, many years. And to be fair, she asked him the proper question. Do you have any evidence? Do you have, or is it because he's supporting a controversial point of view? She said that. Obviously, Rubio, who has a great long record of anti-Palestinianism and basically catering to Israel in every which way, supporting Israel in all its efforts, supporting their genocide, their attack, all throughout, ever since he became a senator. So his position basically is so weak. It's so shallow. First of all, as Greg said, that students, when they get a visa, as a student visa, it's decided on the academic merit. They say that I'm applying for this university, and this university has to accept you to get the visa. This is not something that you can go and say, I'm here to get a visa, but once I get there, I want to protest against the United States of America. Or its action. That does not happen. And there are a lot of students, both Palestinians, Arabs, and many from many other countries. They're quite accomplished academically, including Mahmoud Khalil. He speaks of the Palestinian situation because he's a Palestinian. He was born and raised in a refugee camp that happened to be there because Israel took over his home. If he does not go out and say this is wrong and I want to be part of this movement, then there is something wrong. Now you have to question, why are people like this? Basically, hiding behind self-interest in this case is not going to get us anywhere. I know that, and Greg knows that, and you know that, Katie. Palestinians are really running scared. They're running scared, unfortunately, now, because of the case of Mahmoud Khalil and other cases, because of Rubio just threatened all students. If you do anything, we're going to deport you. Yeah. He threatened even all green card holders. Now, we're going to go through the process on how you got your green card. We don't know what comes next. Naturalized American like myself. I don't know. It could be. Right. There's all kinds of something on pretext that this administration is willing to do. So this is where the independent media has to come in and has to spotlight that day in and day out, because students are caught between whatever the hammer and the anvil, or whatever, as we say in Arabic, between the rock and a hard place in American. And because on the one hand, they want to be active. Their families are there. their people, their cousins, many of them. I mean, I know so many students from Gaza who lost scores of relatives and so on. So on the one hand, and they want to focus on their studies. I don't see many, I mean, that's not to say that Palestinian students are special and so on, but they really are serious students by and large. They go to school, they work, they get jobs, and now to really basically threaten them that whatever you do, we're going to deport you if you do it under any pretext, it is really scary.
Yeah, it is really scary. And especially combined with what you referred to before, Craig, which is seeing that a judge ordered a plane full of, carrying Venezuelan people to be turned around. And they just said, no, we're not going to turn around. So checks and balances clearly are not working. Let's just watch a little bit more of that Rubio clip.
Is there any evidence of a link to terrorism, or is it just his point of view?
Yeah, they take over. I mean, you should watch the news. These guys take over entire buildings.
They
vandalize colleges.
Intensely.
They shut down colleges.
I'm asking about the specific justification for the revocation of his visa. Was there any evidence of material support for terrorism?
Was the negotiator negotiating on behalf of people that took over a campus, that vandalized buildings? Negotiating over what? That's a crime in and of itself, that they're involved in being the negotiator, the spokesperson, this, that, the other.
We
don't need these.
Craig, I wish I had gone to law school because I didn't know that negotiating with the college administration is a crime in itself.
Not just a crime, it's an act of terrorism.
Right.
So of course it's terrorism. Don't you watch the news? They took up, because a sit-in is an act of terrorism in the mind of, in a just world, Marco Rubio would be in prison for the crimes that they're committing here. And Mahmoud Khalil will be the president of that university. But it's very, very dangerous. The one point that we didn't talk about here was, the way that they targeted Mahmoud Khalil. First, they thought he was vulnerable because he wasn't a citizen. And they're always going for what they see as the people, that they can pick on. But also, they did it in collaboration with Israel proxy groups, and not just Israel proxy groups, but Zionist extremist groups, whose job it is to harass and persecute Palestinians and those who protest against Israel. The U.S. government collaborating with these organizations who have genuine links to unlawful activity, and yet the government is taking their side against peaceful human rights defenders on college campuses. And, it's just another way that they have turned the law on its head. There's a provision in the Naturalization Act, in immigration law in the U.S. that says that if you have any way been involved in or supported a genocide, you are excludable from the United States. What the Trump administration has done is they've turned that on their head, and they've said, if you oppose a genocide that we support, you are excludable. Right. That's turning the law exactly on its head. And so you have, criminals in power and defenders of human rights in prisons. That's where we are headed with this.
They probably does behind closed doors consider like the student sit-ins to desegregate the South. He probably thinks that was terrorism, right? Like protests against Jim Crow.
And coming from the top American diplomat, diplomacy is supposed to be his job. Negotiation could be his job. So talk about things turned upside down on their head. I don't think these issues ought to be taken lightly, because this is the thing. I mean, if you say something and do something, then you push it a step more or a step further, and that there's no end to it. And I think that what we see happening, not only to the Palestinians but also elsewhere. I mean, look, the United States of America went and bombed the heck out of Yemen in the last few days on behalf of Israel. This is crazy. Where is the tax dollars, the tax money, and so on? You're doing it on behalf of a foreign nation. You're threatening Iran that you want to go to war that could probably devolve into some sort of international conflict and so on. Maybe World War III. We don't know. So this is terrible. I mean, the American public ought to take a stand. I think this is a great time for the American public to say, look, this is not in our name. We have to correct things and so on. If a movement is not, and I'm not trying to provoke, and I'm trying to agitate or anything like this, but in the end, things begin to happen without the public caring. If you look at it and view it as an outside observer and not realizing that this is done in your name and with your tax dollars. I mean, 100 fighter jets attacked Gaza last night. 100 F-35s, F-16s. There's not a single anti-aircraft gun in Gaza. Not one. There's not a single, ground-to-air defense in Gaza. It's just non-existent. So they basically, it was just, a shooting exercise, like shooting fish in a barrel, as the saying goes, and so on. And this went on for hours, and there was no response from Hamas. Simply, they don't have a response. I mean, this is an unarmed people. People tend to forget that Hamas is basically a ragtag militia. It's no more than that. It does not have an army. It does not have a support system. It does not have countries aiding it and supporting it. Iran was blamed for supporting Hamas and so on. Iran has ceased to support it. I mean, look what happened to Hezbollah. Look at what happened to Syria and so on. They are all alone, and they know that. And I think they are taking advantage of that. They know. Talk about why Netanyahu chose this moment. He chose this moment for these reasons. Basically, he knows. I mean, he tried to. He fired the Shabak guy, Ronen Bar. He brought in this crazy nut Zamir and put him at the head of the military and so on. Who speaks clearly and speaks openly of destroying and killing Palestinians and so on, and removing them and all that. He brought back Ben Gvir, and of course Smotrich was there the whole time. So that this works to his advantage, and he wanted to pass the budget that is at the end of the 31st. I don't want to get involved in Israeli politics. It's crazy. So, but they have the budget confirmation coming in on the 31st of March, and he wants to do all this so he can pass, so he can stay in power. He's basically doing all this to stay in power and to basically to cater to the right wing, cater to the settlers, cater to all the nuts that need to expel the Palestinians.